Now, look who's next. Karl Rove, the man himself with it. I don't see the whiteboard yet, but I presume he'll make an appearance at some stage later. Karl, I want to talk about Congresswoman Summer Lee. As you may have just seen, she won the primary. She is a squad member. That's a squad win. She's vigorously anti-Israel. What does that tell you about Hamas and the Democrats?
Well, it tells us that they do have a purchase on a significant part of the Democratic primary voter in a deeply Democrat district like this is. Summer Lee was opposed 2 years ago very strongly by AIPAC and other pro-Israel groups and defeated their candidate. This time around, they sort of sat on the sidelines. This is not the biggest test of their political power. I think that's coming in places like Cori Bush's race in St. Louis. They basically took a pass on it. She was opposed by a pro-Israeli Republican, Jeff Yass, who underwrote a super PAC effort against her, but she dismissed it in this Democratic district as a Republican trying to take her out. So I don't read much into it, except to say the Democrats have a problem because there is an element of their party which is anti-Israel, pro-Palestine, and by that I mean endorsing things like from the river to the sea, a slogan calling for the extinction of the Jewish state of Israel.
I don't know where Jewish voters find a place for themselves in the Democrat Party, but they do, apparently. Moving on. President Biden spoke on abortion during his campaign event in Florida. Roll that tape, please.
Trump goes on to say individual state laws are working, his words, brilliantly. Brilliantly. It's a 6-week ban in Florida. It's really brilliant, isn't it? Trump is literally taking us back 160 years. He says it's up to the states. And this is all about states' rights. But he's wrong. The Supreme Court was wrong. It should be a constitutional right in the federal Constitution, a federal right.
All right, Karl, how potent an issue is abortion for Biden? Is it a game changer?
No, it's not a game changer, but it could hurt if the Republicans don't have a better answer than we're going to leave it up to the states, because people in the states want to know where you are on this. The president would be better off if he said it ought to be left up to the states. And if I were a legislator or a governor, I'd be advocating a bill that allowed abortion up to 14 weeks, 15 weeks, and after that had exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I think parents ought to be involved in the decisions of their teenage daughters. And I'm totally opposed to what the Democrats want, which is abortion in the second and third trimesters, and show some empathy on the issue. That would help make it a winning issue. But if it is simply we're going to leave it up to the states, and then Biden and the Democrats are going to be able to point to things like the Florida and Arizona laws, which allow abortion only in the first 6 weeks, and they'll make hay with that among certain elements of the population. This is not an absolute winner for the Democrats. We saw that in Virginia in the off-year elections, where the Republicans were on the receiving end of abortion attacks, and they took every state House of Delegates district that Joe Biden won by 10 points or less, and every Democratic state Senate seat the district that had been won by Biden by 9.5 points or less. Imagine what the Congress would look like if the Republicans were able to gain all the seats that Joe Biden had won by 10 points. It'd be a big shift in the Congress. But they got to have an answer. They got to have an answer. Better than we're going to leave it to the states.
Just looking for a moment briefly at Trump's trial in New York City. Do you think he's gaining some sympathy in the electorate because he's stuck in court whilst Biden's out there campaigning?
Well, I'm not certain that he is gaining sympathy, but I think it's less because he's stuck there than it looks political in that the Democratic DA is going after him. And he's also had an advantage. His campaign says that they've been raising a lot of money by talking about this in their internet appeals. But look, we're at the beginning of this process, and this is not going to help his mental attitude, and it's also not going to help the more we hear about this unseemly activity to hide personal relations that he had with various sundry women over the years. That's not going to help him over the long haul. We're at the beginning of this. We don't know how it's going to play out. Minor advantage to him financially right now, keeps him off the campaign trail, which is a disadvantage, but we don't know how it's going to play out here in the weeks ahead. Yeah. I think it's going to end up being somewhat hurtful to him, but not dispositive.
We missed the whiteboard. Next time, maybe. Karl Rove, see you again soon, I do hope. Thank you, Karl.